Hi guys, so the video I wanted to do for you today would be how to read a novel. So I know novels can be a bit difficult just because they range in themes and kind of language and stuff like that. So some of them can be pretty boring if you're not interested in that time period or in what they're talking about. And some of them can be really, really hard to get into just because they have a lot of symbolism and stuff like that. So these tips are going to be good whether you're reading for a history class or for an English class or whatever you're reading this novel for. So basically, when you read a novel, you're kind of getting a taste and a feel for that time period. If you're in a history class, what was going on, what were they feeling socially, what is it trying to express? When you're reading a novel for an English class, it's kind of showing you as humans what's going on. What does it give us? What does it show about human nature? And what does it show universally? It's more opened for interpretation, I guess. So the two novels that I have with me right now are Memoirs of an Italian Terrorist and Swaziland. So I'm going to tell you the difference between these books and kind of go through the first steps that I do before I'm going to start reading a novel. So the first thing that I do is that I Google the author himself, just because I kind of approach reading a book the same way I would approach when I'm going to go watch a film or a movie. I want to know who the director is, I want to know who the actor is, and I want to know what the story is about. Just because you're not going to show up to the movie and be like, oh, let's watch Romeo and Juliet. That sounds interesting. I have no idea what it's about. I don't know who the characters are. I have no idea about it. You wouldn't do that. You would go ahead and look into the story itself to see if you're interested in it. Although in school you don't really have much of a choice, but at least you know what's coming up. Then the next thing that I do is that I look at a plot summary. I know sometimes they have them in the back, but sometimes they're really short and they don't really tell you much, so I kind of want to know, like, realistically, what's the story about. I guess it would be the equivalent of looking at multiple trailers of the same movie. You kind of get more glimpse of the story itself. Then the other thing that I do is that I look up whether it's a translation. Like this one, it's by Giorgio, but it's translated and introduced by Anthony Sugar. So I'm not going to Google Sugar. He's not very important to this, but it's good to know that it is a translation. Some books, you kind of lose the feeling of the book when it's translated, and the meaning might be a little different. But as far as this one is concerned, it got really good reviews. The translation is supposed to be very true to the book, so we're going to take his word for it. The other thing that I do is that I see, once I've Googled the author, then I kind of want to know a little bit about him. So, is he Italian? If this is a memoir of an Italian terrorist, is the author Italian? Is he American? Is he British? Was he even there? If he wasn't there, then what does that tell us about it? I guess a good example would be if you read a book about Americans and it's written from a British or a French or a foreign author, then you have to take into consideration that it's probably not telling you much about the Americans themselves. It's telling you about the feelings of the author and how Americans were portrayed in wherever he's from. So that's kind of how you would take it. If it's written from a specific perspective and it's about completely different people, then it's not telling you much about those people. It might tell you a bit, but it's telling you more about the author himself, because we tend to put a lot of ourselves into our writing. So with that said, then I go ahead and I read the book. The other thing that I do is that if it's a translation like this book, I go ahead and I skip the introduction and the foreword. There's a reason for that. I do go back and read it later, but not in the beginning. So go ahead and I read the book. This one is actually, there's no chapters in it, and that can be a bit difficult as well. So the way that I overcome the book itself not having chapters is that I go ahead and I stop after something major has happened. Has someone just died? Has someone just moved? Has someone just lost their job? Has someone just got married? Anything major that happens, I go ahead and stop there, because I'm going to remember what just happened. Oh, someone just got married. Instead of stopping randomly in the middle or in a paragraph break. Just because these paragraph breaks can signal a different voice, a different character, someone else talking, or they could just be completely fragmented from one point to another. It might just try to show how fragmented the individual himself was or what trauma he went through. So you want to go ahead and stop whenever something major happens. The other thing as you're reading is that if you find an interesting quote, you want to go ahead and pull it. Just because this is your perception of it, you're reading it, so it's important for you to highlight what you think about it as well. Usually, if the author sets up a scenario really talks a lot about it and kind of closes it with a couple sentences, those sentences are going to give you the flavor of what just happened. Is he analyzing himself as the book is going? That's another thing you want to look at. Is the narrator omnipresent, omniscient? Does he know everything? Is he involved in the story, but you don't know anything about him? Just like I just read The Fur Hat, and the narrator himself, you never find out his name or what he does. You just know that he knows the characters involved. So that's another thing about the book. So once I'm done with it, I really kind of think about it. Did I like the protagonist? Did I like the antagonist? Did I like the story? What did I think about it? How did I feel about them? Were they likable, not likable? How were they presented? And then once I'm done with that, then I go read and I read the intro and the foreword. So the reason why I don't do it in the beginning is because if I'm reading this book, there's probably maybe a 70-30, 90% chance that I have to write a paper on it. And if I'm going to write a paper on it, I want it to be my ideas. I want it to come from me. I want it to be my analysis and my perspective on the story itself. I'm not saying that the perspective and the analysis from Anthony Sugar is not good. I'm just saying that if the professor has read it and she knows what the intro and the foreword says, you don't want to pull on those ideas just because you're not doing a good paper. So once I go ahead and read that, usually the introduction and the foreword will give you some time period analysis, like it'll kind of take you into what was going on. If you're reading it for an English class, it might be good for you to go ahead and start reading that. For a history class, I would say no, just wait, because you probably know the time period already. So it's going to take you into it. It's going to take you into themes that the author's touching on. It's going to start telling you stuff like that. But it's also going to start to reveal analysis on the book itself. And that's something that you personally I avoid, because again, I want to have my ideas and my analysis on the book because I have to write the paper. So I want to make sure that whatever feelings I have for it are feelings that I'm going to express later on paper. Sometimes often I read the foreword and I'm like, oh, okay, that's what he meant, or that's where that reference came from, because I googled the reference and I knew the meaning, but I didn't know where the reference came from. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Or I agree, or I guess I see how that works in that context, or I guess I see how he used that and this and that. So once you've read the story, then in order to get further clarification, I go ahead and read the foreword. I don't read that first because I feel like it also kind of ruins the story for you, because it doesn't tell you what's going to happen, but I don't know, it gives away too many feelings of the book, I think. So Swaziland is actually a ton of short stories about a specific time period. And these do have chapters. They are very small, so these are really easy to get through. This book was definitely an easy read. And both of these books are written in contemporary language, meaning it's English that you and I would understand. Sometimes books like Pride and Prejudice, or maybe something a little bit older like Herodotus the Histories or North and South, are written in a different style of English. So whenever you read that and you find like, I have no idea what's going on, I'm pretty confused, again, try reading it out loud. When you read it out loud, it kind of gives you the flavor for it. If it's a poem, definitely read it out loud and focus on the punctuation. If it's a long poem like Beowulf, again, definitely read it out loud. If it's supposed to be a play, if you're reading Shakespeare, like Othello, I'm actually tutoring someone on Othello right now, go ahead and read it and then watch the play, the original play. And then go ahead and see like the emotion and everything that was behind it, just because I feel that, especially with Shakespeare, once you see it, it sounds a lot better because it's meant to be acted out. So those are just my little tips, and again, I hope they help. Novels are great. There's a ton of them that I was forced to read that I genuinely love and enjoy and have kept. So I hope that you guys can enjoy them as well and still manage to analyze them, hopefully not to death, but in order to get something really good and write a very successful paper. So I hope that helps, and I'll see you guys later. Bye!